Hello and welcome to the program. Welcome again to your weekday dosage of business, finance, economy, markets and investment. Thank you all for joining us again today. I am Nancy Naji. I will be taking you through the business news in a bit, also the markets. How are the markets faring today? So much concerning global markets as it relates to U.S. inflation data. U.S. inflation data came out yesterday, and it did tell us that inflation is cooling in the United States of America, which is the #1 economy in the world, 6.5%. How are markets really shaping up to that news? And what are the expectations, definitely, from the U.S. Fed in coming months? I'll be taking you through that within the markets round up, yes, for yesterday, as well as how we are trading today. Today on the show, we will be talking about learning, that's learn, unlearn, and relearn. We're still in a new year, just a few days into the new year. You know, so much expectations come with the new year, especially concerning your life, your business, or different facets of your life, really. We will be talking about things perhaps you need to learn, you need to relearn, and you need to unlearn. Because if you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result, they say that is insanity or madness for short. If you are expecting a different outcome, perhaps in your finances, in your business, with your relationships, with your network, you've got to do things differently. So you've got to learn, you've got to unlearn, and you've got to relearn. So that's what the show is about today. So do stay tuned, tell a friend to tell a friend, and don't forget to join us on all media platforms. Let's quickly take the business news. And 4.4 is one of the nation's smart irrigation scheme. Haruna revealed that various actions are already in place across several regions of the country to develop a multi-crop, multi-season agricultural program and establish 6 agricultural machinery and equipment development institutes in each of the geopolitical zones as part of an all-year-round bumper harvest plan. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has stated that Nigeria's oil and condensate production may average 2.2 million barrels per day in 2023. The Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPC Limited, Mele Kyari, stated this at the Global UAE Energy Forum. Nigeria's oil production was relatively low in 2022, with the country missing the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries production target throughout the year. All output hit an all-time low of 972,334 barrels per day in August 2022, falling further to 937,766 barrels in September. Kyari also noted that Nigeria is targeting the export of premium motor spirit by mid-2023 as local refining capacity rises to 1.1 million barrels per day. Tosin Olasanyide, who is the founder of Money Africa, has described financial goals as a situation in which you build assets to sustain you in any given circumstance with a long-term plan of achieving financial success in life. Take a listen.
That a financial goal is a situation whereas your assets can take care of you. That's like the general guide, meaning that if you were to go out of a job, if you were to quit your job, if you were to fall sick in the future, do you have anything that will look after you while you sleep? And that's primarily what a good financial goal is. So that if you are not actively working again, is there something that can take care of you? And that's why financial goals are usually long-term. For a lot of people, they cannot achieve that till like the next 10, 15, or even 20 years. So we're very long-term in nature, thinking about those financial goals, so that financial independence at the end of the day is that, should I take some time off? Should I not want to work? is there something that is taking care of me? Have I built assets that the returns can actually look after me?
The Central Bank of Nigeria has disclosed that between January and October 2022, Nigeria spent a total of $12.44 billion on the importation of petroleum products as contained in the October 2022 economic report. The CBN also added that although the country's gross federation receipts, which were 1.17 trillion naira at the time under review, were above the level in September 2022 by 7%, they all fell short of the target of 1.5 trillion naira. The bank's 2022 economic report also stated that higher import bills, particularly for petroleum products, pushed merchandise imports northwards. The Nigeria Customs Service Apapa Command has reported that it facilitated $68.5 million exports and generated 1.02 trillion naira from cargoes imported into the country from January to December 2022. The Nigerian Customs Service said that non-oil exports facilitated through the Apapa Command was 6.4 million metric tons worth $68.5 million on board, which is 16.07% higher than 870.38 billion naira collected in 2021, as this was made possible by the collaboration with the other agencies of government to enhance productivity of the command. The Central Bank of Nigeria has promised to sanction commercial banks hoarding new naira notes from the general public. According to the CBN, it has commenced monitoring of commercial banks to identify those who are not issuing new naira notes to customers. Benedict Madwago, branch controller of Awka Central Bank of Nigeria, that's the CBN branch in Anambra State, that's in Awka, the capital, disclosed this during a sensitization program for traders at the main markets in Onitsha, Anambra State. He urged traders to accept the new notes, claiming that they would help to control inflation and bring hoarded currency into the banking system, and that the currency redesign would aid in the fight against corruption by reining in higher denomination used for corruption. The United Arab Emirates said on Thursday, January 12th, that the head of state oil giant Abu Dhabi National Oil Company would lead this year's COP28 climate summit. Sultan Al Jaber, Minister of Industry and Technology, noted that a climate envoy will help shape the conference's agenda and intergovernmental negotiations to build consensus.
Whether it's the selection of which country hosts the COP or which person presides over the COP is a matter for member states, in which the Secretary General or the Secretariat of the UNFCCC have absolutely no involvement. Having said so, the science is extremely clear. We are losing the battle to prevent the worst impacts of the climate crisis. For his part, the Secretary General reaffirms that there is no way to avoid such a climate catastrophe without ending our addiction to fossil fuels.
We have connected all our operations to zero carbon nuclear and solar power. We are electrifying our offshore operations to cut their carbon footprint in half. And we are pressing down harder and harder on our methane intensity, even though we already have one of the lowest levels in the world.
Capital imports into Nigeria's economy fell 24.6% year-on-year to $4.56 billion in the first 10 months of 2022, from $6.05 billion in the same period in 2021. According to the Central Bank of Nigeria's monthly economic report, capital outflows dropped by 32% year-on-year to $5.53 billion in the 10 months of 2022, down from $7.3 billion in the 10 months of 2021. Further investigation revealed that capital outflows stood at $290 million in January 2022, gradually increasing to $740 million in April and declining to $490 million in May. Outflows reached $710 million in July before falling to $280 million in The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has announced the extension of the deadline for collecting permanent voters' cards, PVCs, from Sunday 22 January to Sunday 29th January. INEC disclosed this in a statement on Thursday, pushing the deadline by 8 days to ensure that registered voters have ample opportunity to collect their PVCs ahead of the forthcoming election. The Presidential and National Assembly elections are slated for February 25, while the governorship and House of Assembly elections will hold on March 11. President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela has stated during his annual State of the Nation address that Venezuela's economy grew by almost 15% last year. He attributed the growth to the economy's diversification for its predominantly oil-based foundation. The country has seen extended economic hardship under its largely state-controlled model, prompting more than 7 million people to migrate, adding that Venezuela has had growth in 2022 above 15% of GDP. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said on Thursday that Canada shares its country's concerns regarding North Korea's nuclear activities. Kishida acknowledged Canada's increased engagement in the Indo-Pacific region as a Pacific state, noting that the two countries will work together towards the realization of the free and open Indo-Pacific markets.
This spring, we're also looking forward to hosting an important business delegation from Japan. They're planning to be meeting with Canadian battery and mining companies and potential partners. Canada, of course, has a lot to offer. We're a reliable and stable partner. We have critical and valuable resources, and we have a skilled, educated, and ambitious workforce.
All right, let's quickly take a break now. That's it really for the business news at this time. We will take a break, and when we do return, I will be taking you through the markets. Yesterday, the Nigerian benchmark index gained about 62 basis points. I'll be giving you more details when we return from the break. Don't forget to join us on all our socials, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm also across those platforms. We'll be right back.
Everything has to be re-examined in our economy, in our health system.
We are also ensuring that government does not continue to manage this refinery, because government is not really equipped to manage refinery. We need to come forward and do something different, so that we move from the situation of looking at things from purely a consumptive approach to a productive environment.
The government and the people need to really agree on the need for a departure from business as usual.
We are now on a process of recovery. It is what I call a bumpy journey to an uncertain destination.
This is Moneyline with me, Nancy Naji. It's so nice to know that you're joining us again today. Okay, let's quickly take the markets right now. I will be going to the video wall, and I expect the director to, punch the FBNH offset sell-offs in Airtel Africa to keep the market in the green. As a result, the YTD return increased to about 1.56%, while market capitalization increased to 173.74 billion to close at 173.74 billion naira really to close at 28.35 trillion naira, as you can see right there on the board. An examination of Thursday's market activities revealed that trade turnover was lower than the previous session, with the value of transactions falling by 5.32% in 3,462 transactions. We saw about 211.74 million shares worth $7.73 billion, that's in the dollarized form, being exchanged. The volume chart was led by Answer Mansard, yes, that's the name of the company, while the value chart was led by Airtel Africa. And despite the 56.94 billion, now moving to the money markets now, talking about the markets diary. Despite the 56.9 billion naira NTB auction settlement, we saw that interbank rates remained in the single digits yesterday. The overnight rates as well as the open buyback rates remained unchanged at 9.5% and 9.83% respectively. However, in the absence of any significant inflow, we expect interbank rates to remain around similar levels at today. All right, what's next? The Treasury bills market traded tepidly with little interest seen across the board. Our market participants anticipate some buy interest today as our Met auction bids spill into the secondary market. Also on Thursday, the FGN local bond market was quite bearish, with sell-offs seen across several maturities. We anticipate that the bearish bias will persist in anticipation of the bond auction calendar. Yesterday also, the Eurobond market was largely bearish, with widespread buying interest, and it is anticipated that the market will be influenced by global events. If we move over to the currencies market, the naira to the dollar exchange rate rose by 16 basis points to about 461.17 compared to $1 at investors and exporters FX window. According to the Central Bank of Nigeria, foreign reserves stood at $37.2 billion on January 11. Now let's move over to Ghana. Let's see how the Ghanaian market is shaping up. Meanwhile, the Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo has hinted that the country's financial bailout from the International Monetary Fund will most likely be secured by the middle of February 2023. Akufo-Addo also added that everything Ghana needs to do or submit in order to reach an agreement with the fund has been completed, and he believes that the processes will be completed by next month. Ghana's economy has suffered greatly in recent years, prompting the country to seek assistance from the IMF. You recall that I told you on the show yesterday that Ghana's inflation is at around 54%, the highest so far in 22 years, where we're seeing non-food inflation around 49.9% and food inflation around 59%. Still in Ghana, the government has agreed to raise the base pay for the single spine salary structure for all public sector jobs by 30%, and this follows several negotiations with organized labor. The group had previously demanded a 60% raise to compensate for the difficult economic conditions. Meanwhile, the Minister of Employment and Labor Relations in Ghana stated that the payments will begin on January 1, 2023. In fact, the finance minister in Ghana did say that it's difficult right now to raise the pay, but for the sake of peace. So instead of 60%, they're doing it 30%. Now let's move over to Kenya, where Kenya's High Court has ordered Safaricom and the Central Bank of Kenya to halt reintroduction of charges on transactions between mobile money wallets and lenders until the outcome of a suit involving financial consumer rights is determined. The order comes after a Kenyan, Moses Wafula, filed an application to have the charges reinstated after they were suspended in 2020 due to COVID-19. He contends that the fees should not be passed on to the consumers. The Central Bank of Kenya announced the reinstatement of the charges in December last year, which would have provided some kind of relief to commercial banks that had complained about the regulators' unwillingness to reinstate the fees. The world economy... Okay. I'm moving ahead of, it's like my brain is moving ahead of my mouth. So now, let both me in sync. What's next? What do I need to tell you next? The World Economic Forum begins next week in Davos, Switzerland. And it's an annual gathering in which a global elite of business leaders, politicians, and economists make bold predictions and attempts to set the agenda for the new year. Now let's move over to United States, as you can see right there. It appears that the U.S. seems to be winning the war on inflation. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the program, the Federal Reserve aggressive interest rate hikes have cooled demand. And according to the December data released on Thursday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S., inflation at the close of 2022 was at 6.5%. And this is the sixth consecutive year-on-year drop, bringing inflation to its lowest level since October of 2021. Still with the United States, we saw that stock futures were slightly lower in early pre-market trading this Friday as investors braced for the start of major bank earnings. After the close, in fact, after closing the previous session, of course, at their highest level since April 2022, while Asia Pacific shares are mostly higher after the consumer price index in the United States showed that inflation slowed in December, raising investors' hope that the Federal Reserve can resume slower interest rate hikes. Interest rates were raised by the Bank of Korea today by 25 basis points to 3.5%, and that is the highest since December of 2008. Now, if we move over to China, according to official figures, China's exports and imports fell less than expected in December. Now, let's take a look at the price of commodities. And talking about all prices fell in early trade today, but they are still on track to gain more than 6% for the week, and thanks to strong signs of demand growth in top crude oil importer China and expectations of less aggressive interest rate hikes in the United States. Gold prices rose slightly on Friday and they're on track for a fourth consecutive weekly gain, aided by a weaker dollar. And we see that gold, I've always said it here on the show, we see that gold typically rises when inflation rises. I've always also told you that there's an inverse relationship between gold and the dollar. However, gold has risen despite cooling inflation because the market expects a lower dollar and fewer interest rate hikes. That's at least from the United States. Prices are facing some kind of resistance around the $1,900 an ounce level, and analysts expect that it will not simply continue to rise, that there may be some selling at this level. All right, those are the numbers for you there. Wheat is trading up by about 0.5%. What am I seeing there? Palm oil is in the red at about $3,800 there. Cocoa is doing $2,640 a ton. All right, that's it for the market. Let's quickly take a break to bring in my guests. We'll be talking about learning and relearning this 2023. What you need to shed to ensure that you have success, perhaps in your finances and even other aspects of life. We'll be right back after this break. Do stay.
Truth untold. We restored democracy. We initiated due process. We created the EFCC and ICPC. We brought Nigeria out of debt by achieving $18 billion worth of relief and $30 billion overall reduction. We revived the rails. We upgraded agriculture. We brought in the mobile phone and digitalized Nigeria. Under the PDP, the Nigerian economy was the strongest in Africa. Though Nigerians made their choice, today we all know better. Nigerians, do not despair. Hope is on the horizon. We are putting in the work and refreshing our drive to rescue and rebuild Nigeria. Together, let's make it happen. PDP. Power to the people.
Here is a new and refreshing offer for our esteemed audience across the globe. The new AIT Cloud TV is an online streaming service that offers you attractive opportunities to view our rich, exciting, and entertaining programs anytime, anywhere. AIT Cloud TV is available on the web on www.ait.app, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Android TV. You can also download the mobile app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Simply connect to the internet, download the app, register, and watch live or catch up on unlimited hours of exciting shows. AIT Cloud TV. TV on the go.
All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is joining me right now, JT Oshoke Abu, who is a career coach. He wants to be addressed as such. Yes. Welcome to the program. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you for having me.
Likewise, thank you for coming. Okay, this topic, is it a necessary topic?
Absolutely.
Why?
So, it's the beginning. Here comes expectations. You know, the end of every year, people have this tendency to take a stock. They review and appraise their year. So what have I achieved this year? Have I achieved all that I set out to? And then now we're in a new year. How do I also achieve those things that I set out to achieve this? That you discover that people would be having a sort of expectation that if they do not pause to actually reflect over what has gone well, what can I do differently? What have I learned from what I did last year that why didn't I achieve the result that I set out to achieve last year? And what can I learn from that so that going forward, I can achieve a different outcome? So it's very relevant at moments like this.
Do you think that people still do this? Do you think that people still take stock in Nigeria, especially where you have 133 million people living in multidimensional poverty that are trying to, scuffle for what they need to eat, let alone saying, how did my last year go? And all of that. Do you think that, I don't even know if we still have a middle class anymore, that majority of us are really caught up in the middle in terms of, we're just trying to get by. So what you did last year, we just continue as it were this year. Do you think that people still take stock?
Yeah, because, so yes, I agree with that. The gap is really widening. So the middle class is almost going extinct, yeah? So people take stock in the sense that whether you like it or not, you would be forced to, because there is a general wave as the year is coming to an end and the year is starting again, 2023. There is that frenzy of New Year resolutions, goal setting. Everybody's talking about it. I said I was going to do this year. My favorite. I said I was going to lose weight this year, and I'm still here. I've not achieved that. So yes, somehow people unconsciously, because when they see what they thought they wanted to achieve and they've not achieved it, somehow you just have to take stock. It's a normal thing.
What are the usual habits, or what are the common habits that people will say, I was doing and I don't want to do it again. You've just given us one. I need to lose weight. Perhaps what comes to my mind for the smokers is every year they'll be like, oh, I need to stop smoking.
Yeah.
Next year, whatever it is that they smoke, you know, I need to, what else again? I need to stop drinking. You know, those are the two coming to
I
my
need to
mind.
save more money.
Yes, I need to. It's a money program.
Oh,
I
yes.
need to save more money.
I need to save more money.
But I'll tell people perhaps you also need to invest more.
Absolutely.
As it were.
Yes.
You know. Okay, what else?
Yeah, so spiritual goals. So people have all sort of goals. So this year I'm going to be closer to God. This year I'm going to fast. I'm going to attend service. More depends on your religion. I'll become more spiritual. I'm going to invest in my personal development. Of course, I want a better job. I want to buy that house. I want to build that house and all that. Going back to the first question in the beginning that you asked me, is this really relevant at this point? I'll tell you, look, Alvin Toffler said that the illiterates of the 21st century are not those who cannot read and write, but will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So it's ever present. So it's an ever-changing world. And if you're not in a position that you should be relearning or learning what you've learned before, then you're just going to remain exactly, you'll get the same results you've always gotten.
So why is it important that we should learn, unlearn and relearn, especially to stay current and to get ahead in life? Market to stay current and to get ahead in life, because you may actually be learning what is not even relevant to you, or you may be encapsulated in the monopoly of your knowledge. Like, okay, I know it all. You understand what I mean? So why is it that important?
Yes, there are two critical words you've already used: relevance. Because it is critical for you. If you do not learn, then you're being left behind. You said current, right? The world is ever changing. So it's ever, we say we live in a VUCA world right now. The world is volatile. Things can happen in the next couple of months, or just tomorrow you could just hear that something happened. God forbid. We had it 2-3 years ago. You know, we didn't plan for that, and COVID happened, and it reset the entire world. So why you must relearn? And then for those in career, for those in the workspace, for those in businesses, they had to adapt. So adaptation. So if you do not unlearn what you know previously, you will be left behind. So there are new ways of doing things. New knowledge is coming. New systems are coming up. New technology in businesses. New ways of innovations and creativity. So for growth too. If you want to grow, and as human beings, everybody, naturally we desire to grow, right? It's a natural characteristic of living things. So if you do not learn or relearn and unlearn, then you're going to stay stagnant. So that's why it's really critical that topics like this are discussed at moments such as this.
Now, let's take a look at the aspect of learning. And what came to my mind really is that what's coming to my mind are the Gen Zs. The Gen Zs that we have now cannot actually comprehend, even for those of us that are living right now. If you take a look back prior the year 2000, you will be wondering how we were able to socialize at that point. Or even the Gen Zs will be wondering how our social life was at that point, and even doing work without computers, doing work without emails, doing work without mobile phones. They can't comprehend it. A child of 5, 6, 4, 3 years now is navigating an iPad, for example. So how can you even tell that child that 25 years ago something like this wasn't there? And I also want you to just suppose it to, by the time these Gen Zs become parents, for example, the world would have, the tech then would be more sophisticated than the antiquated tech. They will be calling this current tech now antiquated.
True.
At that point. So what is the significance of, I hope you understand where I'm going to and what you need to derive from what I've just said. Why the significance of learning exactly before we go to learning and relearning?
Okay, yeah, so the significance of learning is that, look, so what any generation at all should learn, like I've established already, is that learning must be a continuum. It's a circle. So learning is in stages. So what you were used to 5 years ago. So I'll give you a classic example, right? So when we went to school in the like 30 years ago, we were taught in geography that Pluto was a planet.
Planet, yes.
Right? And we wrote that. So my kids now in primary school, they're coming home with their assignments, and I'm seeing that, hello, the planet, the solar system, Pluto is no longer a planet, right? So there is, what a Gen Z or anybody should realize at this moment is that open-mindedness. Information, knowledge will change.